going to be for you, particularly in terms of sexuality. Because there's going to come a point where girl next door, who is blonde hair, blue-eyed, thin, white, Christian, goes to church on Sunday, all those things, the further away from that you go, the more layers are going to begin to be put on you. So if you are, you know, brown and not Christian and so on and so forth, there's only one of two ways you can go. You are either evil, you're the bad way, you're over here, or you are overly sexualized to the point to where you are exoticized, where you are the exotic, you're the forbidden fruit, you're the thing. Clearly, you must be so far away from who we are that there must be something almost magical about the sexual quality of you. Because girl next door, while she has all this stuff, she's boring. We can do that any day. This over here must be amazing and wonderful because it's a thing we've never seen before, and it's very exotic. So to answer your question is, who's got it best? The people who are closest to the middle. Who's got it the worst? The farther you get out here.
So follow-up question. If a person who is closer to that middle, that perceived norm, engages in a sexual behavior that's deviant, and someone who's not, is it viewed as more deviant for the person who's not closer to that norm?
Because you're supposed to be the pure and original people, so clearly there's something really wrong with you. We have to shove you to the outside with two hands. Which is why if you are a really good-looking, blonde, white girl, thin, have all that stuff, and you're a lesbian, you are that. Because that belongs to us. That's ours. And you are so much like us that because you're not like us, you are actually super deviant. You must be way over here. Because all of that stuff that belongs, we have to push you out. Because if you can have everything we have and you're a lesbian, you have tainted that pure and original people. You're poison. Which is why sometimes the people who have it hardest are the women who are not straight, who will be sexually harassed by every straight person on the planet. Because you're supposed to be one of us, and you're not.
Yeah, or they try to fix you.
Or they try to fix you.
And be like, oh, it's just, you haven't met the right man. Don't worry about it, honey. I got that taken care of. Like,
right.
No, you probably really don't.
Being the dominant group, you get to act with that privilege without really looking in and seeing the truity of these actions. You've been told your entire life, this is what you deserve. You've done everything right. You were born right, and you keep acting right. So for you not to get that woman, that's awful. And sometimes you kind of like a challenge, but other times you're just going to hate on that and send harassment.
Because at the very root of our society is the fact that women are available for sex to men.
Always.
Always. So clearly if you are the most desirable yet you don't desire a man, that's a severe problem in this country. Severe problem. Because you're taking away my birthright. I'm supposed to get to have sex with you. As my popular culture has taught me literally every single day since the day I could consume it. Mario, your prize is in another castle. Every single day, men are taught. Every single day, men are taught that women are their prize for victory. Any woman. The one that I want. The one that I want is my prize. And if she doesn't behave in ways that then lend herself to being my prize, the problem isn't me, the problem is her. That's embedded in the fundamental nature of popular culture in our society.
And I think the closer you get to that center group, the greater that just kind of blind entitlement is, of not having to
Absolutely.
question, you know, why do I view this woman as a commodity and property that I have a right to? But kind of when you get into other male groups that are kind of further away from that, like, white heterosexual dominant group, it becomes entitlement in a different way, because it's like, and I would say this is similar in some regards with women too, but, you know, greater with men of like, I see what this dominant culture has, why don't I get that too? So I think that's kind of why we see some of these behaviors spanning some of those different layers, is because it goes back to that dominance of like, that entitlement, but it just looks a little different in different demographics.
So you had mentioned at the start, Dr. Bill, talking a little bit about the commodification. Do you feel like deviance and sexuality, so the example that we always bring up in our classes is like the 50 Shades of Grey, like there's a deviant sexuality there. Do you think that deviant sexuality is more commodifiable than a normalized sexuality, or is it less?
If it's commodified in ways that are safe for me so that I can play without too much danger to myself, then yes, I do think it's more commodifiable, right?
And it doesn't threaten your identity
Exactly.
and that safety net.
So there's a perceived level of deviance that if it crosses a line somewhere for some people,
Sure.
it's just...
There's a perceived level of deviance that's kind of fun. Like being able to go just outside of what you're supposed to do is kind of fun. Ooh, we're being a little bit dangerous, right? Everybody talks about like having sex in the park, but people don't actually have sex in the park. You know, a few people do, but the vast majority of people would be walking with their significant other through the park, and then they would see a place, they'd be like, ooh, we can totally have sex there. And then they would go home and have sex. Because the vast majority of people, real deviance is not, it's scary. And so there's this level of sort of pretend deviance, like a 50 Shades of Grey kind of a thing, where we can participate, but then our safety word gets used really quickly. Because that's, you know, it is not in the nature of the way in which people in this culture are socialized to believe that they can participate in anything even remotely actually deviant.
And the way that this is portrayed, you know, picking parts and pieces away from its sexual expression that we don't want it fully, we don't really want to understand it. Like, look at commercials and the way that they use BDSM and SM imagery and scenes to kind of sell their product. It's fun in that moment, and it certainly serves a benefit, but we don't want to actually learn about that community and take it down. And anybody trying to explore outside of their sexual expression, you know, like, I'm down for handcuffs, but I don't want to learn about the whole community, which there's a lot to learn from that community. The entire basis of BDSM and SM is consent and communication. That's kind of something that everyone else should learn from, but again, it's taking bits and pieces and never looking holistically at this whole idea, which keeps it in this box or on this shelf that contains the definition of deviance in itself. It keeps it safe from fully embracing it and becoming it, but we can take the parts that we want that benefit us in this excitement or selling the product.
While still maintaining our holier than thou like outlook of like, oh, like, yeah, I'm into handcuffs, but God, I would never do that. To be able to continue, like, to put yourself into this, or, you know, members of your community, like, into this higher position, so that you don't actually have to accept anything that would be other than what you are.
I mean, almost every sexual human being on the planet has some varying degree of fetish about their sexual behavior. But if we were to walk around and actually ask people what their fetishes are, we would probably find they are super boring. They just are. Because they're not as deviant as people like to think. That everyone thinks, oh, it's so like weird or whatever, like I'm into feet. Like that's not weird at all. People have feet. Like that's not at all weird. But we think of it as, because it's just this much deviant from actual sex, which is just deviant enough for us to feel weird, enough for it to sort of be pleasurable. Right?
And because we just never talk about sex.
Right.
We like can see sex, but like God, I was with my family over the weekend, and we were just like